Mr. Nick Slavik, how are you?
Good, Dom. How about you?
I'm good. I'm good. Nice to be talking to you again.
Agreed.
Yeah. Is that the war room I see behind you?
This is the war room, my brand new war room. It is my newly built company headquarters. I think I've been operating on it for a couple months now.
Yeah. Freshly painted, I see.
Fresh. I know a guy.
That's my favorite saying. I know a guy. Yeah. Well, I like that war room. I first saw it when I was looking at watching some of your videos on what's your show? Ask a Painter Live?
Ask a Painter Live. Yep.
Now, listen, I'm going to interrupt us for a second. Anybody listening to this show right now who thinks, this is about painting, I'm going to skip forward on this episode. Don't do that. The reason Nick is here is because he's a businessman who's in construction. And if you're listening to this show, you want to talk to more business people in construction. And I think Nick's got, from all the videos I've watched of yours, and I've watched quite a few, you are a businessman who's in construction. So thanks for joining us.
Oh, absolutely. It's an honor to be here.
Thanks. Well, before I do your intro for you, Nick, why don't you tell us who you are, what the heck you do, and why you would be on a show talking to other trades contractors?
Yeah, so I own a residential repaint company in Minnesota. I am also the host of a live weekly show on Facebook called Ask a Painter Live. It gets archived on YouTube. I'm a board member on the National PCA, Painting Contractors Association, as well. So I love this craft more than anything else. I've been doing it since I was 10 years old. I love molecular science of coatings. I love pushing the limits of what's possible. But as you mentioned, none of that is useful unless you can actually make money doing it. So I am just as jazzed about entrepreneurship as I am with that. And I use those as two weapons that I yield simultaneously in this industry.
Now, Nick, why would you talk about weapons? Do you have any experience with weapons?
No. Yes, a little bit. Yes. After high school, I did do 4 years of active duty service in the Army between 2000 and 2004. Again, we are in an interesting time in the world now. That was another interesting time in the world as well. So lots of interesting times.
Well, I won't ask you too much because I know you're probably not allowed to talk about it anyways. But for yourself and all other servicemen and women out there, thank you for the work that you guys do and have done. Appreciate it. Mm-hmm. That is why we get to have conversations like this, where we have the freedom to do what we want and go knock on any door we like and ask for business.
That's right.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, Nick, the reason that I reached out to you, as I said, I was watching a couple of your videos. One of them, you had something called a project plan on. And the people that listen to this show know I'm a big fan of systems, trying to get consistency in the business so the business owner's not going bonkers all the time. Tell us a little bit about your project plan and how that works to manage a residential job.
Yeah, so basically, I am a fan of processes and systems only at the most simplistic level. I never add a standard operating procedure, a process, or a system unless I need it. Again, coming from the Army, there was a SOP for making your bed. That is ridiculous. We do not need an SOP for making a bed. So I don't want to inundate my people with that sort of thing. But when a problem arises, you try to find the simplest solution for it. And the biggest problem in contracting is I would like to do a good job for my clients and make money. So this project needs to be under budget with no callbacks. But what happens in the trades is the way I was raised, which my father screams at you, go do it faster, go do it better. And I have no idea how long this is supposed to take. I don't know what good looks like. And so I said, well, this is simple. I recruit people who have no experience in the trades. They're not going to know what to do. So a project plan is a simple little spreadsheet that basically lists an hourly budget for the project, which my production managers come up with if it's a 40-hour project. The painter will sit down in the first 15 minutes of that job and say, I have 40 hours to get this done. We work a 4-day, 10-hour work week. We got 4 days. What has to happen each hour of each day in order to get that project under budget? I'll review the project plan, and then daily my production managers check in to see if they're on budget.
Wow. How just so we get a sense of this, how big is your crew now?
Yeah, we have about 25 craftspeople and then a couple people on the leadership team with me.
Great. And how long have you been running the company?
I'm on my 13th or 14th year now. And I have been forced into this trade since I was 10 years old. So I'm approaching 28 years holding a paintbrush.
Yeah. I mean, I started in painting and I don't think my shoulders could handle it anymore.
I don't know if mine can either.
Shh, don't tell everybody else. But you first started out, how big was your first crew?
Oh man, I started, you know, I did the same thing, Dom, that every other painter in the United States did, which was, you know, I just painted alone. I was the chuck in a truck. So I did that for about 2 years. And then I started taking on my first employee. And, you know, you can imagine, we talked about the Army. I was coming out of the Army, top physical shape. You know, I did a little bit of college, and then I was 25, 26, and I was just killing it painting by myself. But logic would tell you, production only goes down from here. Yeah. Like I am not going to see a peak 15 years from now in my physical performance. So it got me thinking, like I saw my father, you know, and he's had 21 surgeries, shoulder, back, spinal fusions, biceps, knees, this and that. And it's like, evidently employees works out. I see other people hiring employees. So we took on employees, and I started with teachers and students because they had an out after 3 months if it didn't work. And then every year I just started building on that. So.
Yeah. It's funny that one of my first painting companies was a student painting company. Actually, my first 2 employees were 2 huge football guys. And I remember I got them set up to do their thing, and I walked around the corner and I heard this ding, 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 coming from around the corner where I just left them. And I came back and they were shaking one guy was shaking on the ladder so much. It was going, ding, 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 ding. They lasted about 20 minutes.
How interesting. You would not expect that.
Football guys. Yeah. I think, you know, it's interesting. The way I started it is I was trained because I had bought a system. Believe it or not, back in college, it was called AAA Student Painters, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I had bought a franchise, which was interesting. Yep. But they taught us to go out and hire students right away, and so I mean, I nowhere close to you. I had 3 2-man crews at my peak, and they were just flying. And I knew my job was to sell to keep them busy.
Yeah,
you know. So the reason I think, Nick, is because I want to talk about the importance of systems. How would your business be functioning today if you didn't have systems, like predictable systems?
Well, it would function the same way as my father's business used to function, which is mass chaos, super unhappy people everywhere, and the eventual split up of a family because of it. I mean, it's just so chaotic. Nobody ever knows what they're supposed to do, when they're supposed to do it, how they're supposed to do it. And I mean, it's the necessity. It's a necessary part of business to at least lay the foundation for everything that comes after it.
If I was brand new to starting a contracting business, or let's say I was hovering at 1 or 2 people on my team, what do you think the first step I should take to start to run it like a business, not like a craftsman?
You know, interestingly enough, I would say get your product and service nailed down so you can provide a constant thing, and then start working on the business part. You know, the first thing I would always tackle is proven product, and then start working on some sort of consistent pricing, or at least have thoughts about pricing, because getting those 2 things in line, a consistent product, a consistent price, allows you to then get data, get analytics, make processes. But if you don't know what product or service to do, or you still have questions about that, it's very hard to make a process or a system for it until you have that. So.
Right. So you say I have to spend some time learning exterior applications, interior applications, what an industrial paint job is versus a residential, stain versus paint.
And you know, your ability to move through that phase is only capped by your willingness to course correct. So, I mean, there's projects that I don't have a lot of experience with, like large scale industrial, you know, painting and stuff like that. But I use some general principles about painting and how long it takes humans to do things. You do one project and you just squeeze it for every drop of data that comes out. And from that, you say, listen, I only have one project, but I can probably get 70% improvement on the next one just by the little bit of data I have there. So again, you don't have to spend 28 years like me doing this. Do 1 house, 2 houses, or 3 houses on the outside. And if you're smart enough to course correct after that, you're going to zero in no time and do that.
Yeah. It does become pretty easy if you figure out how many square feet, we used to count ladder moves. Do you count ladder?
Yeah. I love that.
I'll tell you. So one of the systems that I remember, and Nick, I'm nowhere near you, but when I would train my guys, I said, okay, this is how many ladder moves I want you to do this house in. And they're like, well, how do you know that? And I said, well, you just take a pebble, you stretch your arms out and you drop the pebble, and then you grab another pebble and you stretch your arms out and you drop another pebble. Those are your ladder moves. And if you're right, you go this way. If you're left-handed, you go that way.
That's right.
Just got to keep it simple, right?
I love that.
So people listening to this show are in all sorts of trades. We obviously have lots of painters. We have roofers, plumbers, guys that do pipe fitting, uh, cabinetry, and all those sorts of things. When they're looking at putting systems in place and running the business a bit better, it just sounds like, where do you start? This is the frustration, is I know I need to put these things in place, but I don't know how to get started, and I'm not good at writing stuff down. So how does somebody just get started?
So this is easy if you've ever done your trade before. And systems and processes are the most popular thing, especially in the trades. They've almost become buzzwords for a reason, cliche for a reason. Yeah. But I get messages all the time with people saying, oh my God, I heard some people took 9 months to make a SOP, a standard operating procedure, or a system. How do I even start? It's like, it took me 3.5 minutes to write my bedroom repaint SOP. If you've painted a bedroom before, list the steps you do. Yeah. It doesn't have to be 150 steps. That's all a system is. Just moving furniture, drop cloth, patch the walls, tape the woodwork, top coat 1, top coat 2, clean up the room. That is now an SOP. Now, you can train in between that, but what we do in my company is we split them up between, I'm sorry, I think I'm getting in the weeds there, but yes, I get frustrated when people say, how do you even write a system or a process? Just write the steps you do. If you've never done it before, try it, and then adjust. But all of us, if you've been in business for more than 6 months, you can write all these down in an hour. It doesn't take long. Use them as a starting point for improvement.
Yeah, I'd have to agree, although I get frustrated by it myself every time I sit down to say, how are we going to do something? Because it often feels like I'm spending all my time writing the system. But then to somebody, I'm like, okay, that worked pretty good. I got a couple questions. I wasn't clear in my instructions, but 80% of it kind of went the way I wanted. And you're right. If I know how to paint a wall, if I know how to frame an outside wall, just write down the systems for framing an outside wall and how to make sure it's square before you put it up. I've made that mistake before too. But down so that somebody can see it. And it ain't hard. I would add the other thing, or let me ask, do you use video at all? Do you, I'm holding up my cell phone for those of you who are listening to audio. Do you record yourself on video at all?
It's all I do. It seems like all of my standard operating procedures, there's some video component of it.
Right. So your crew can watch it.
Yeah. And again, if you recall, like, of my 25 craftspeople, half the people have enough experience to kind of provide a proven product and know what they're doing, and half are in some sort of their apprenticeship, not knowing that. So when you tell them to paint a door, like, it would be helpful to show them what the kind of door you're talking about is like, and just so they can get a frame of reference, because sometimes we're tradespeople who think, yeah, paint a door on the outside. We know it's going to be a steel service door, 6 panel. There's 1 million of them made. They may not know. They may think you're talking about the interior door. So just having a frame of reference is useful sometimes.
Yeah, I would have to admit that the first time I found out what a soffit and a fascia were, those are new to me. Right?
Yeah. Once you see them one time, you'll never forget them. So,
if it's not normal language, how are you going to know what?
That's right.
So when you go to hire people, because that's a significant size crew now, what are you looking for in the people you hire, these apprentices, to make sure that they're the kind of people who are going to follow your systems?
Yeah, so we're sort of known for something that we've coined the decent human being theory, which is we are really not interested in experienced tradespeople. I will certainly consider, but we have we look for people who are just good humans and meet our core values. And we find that if you have a good culture fit and you find somebody who's happy and optimistic, they will learn your trade in no time. I talk with painters all over the country. I have never met a painter who couldn't train another painter to paint. I do meet people every day who cannot make non-decent human beings into decent human beings. I don't know that I'm even capable in our business of doing that. If you're a bad person, we're not going to make you good, but we can take a non-painter and make a painter. So that's sort of what we do. We have with experienced painters, or people who say they have experience, they come into our company and we have about a 10% track record of them staying more than a year. Every single one of them comes in and says, oh man, my other company stinks. I want to come here. You got plenty of work. You got systems, you got processes. I want to be part of somebody that appreciates me. And I say, good. As long as you're willing to learn our systems and processes, this is going to be awesome. And from day one, they buck the system. And this is the way I've always done it. And we say, all right, this is your chance. If you're not on board with us, if you don't want to be part of this family, you're gone. And most of the time they're gone.
Really? So, and you're very upfront with that. This is our system.
Yeah, listen, arguably, there's not many more people in my industry who have thought more about these than I have. I mean, I can tell you the molecular science of every coating that we use, why we use it. I've done 30 tests to make it fail. I've done 30 things to make it good. There are people who know more about this than me. Nobody's put it together like this. So if this isn't something you're interested in, go back to what you were doing. We only want to make this easy, fast, happy clients, profitable work. Our intent is not to lay on military style SOPs to make you conform to something that doesn't produce a good product. I have honed this thing so that we do minimal effort, maximum results, happy clients.
That's why you're on the show, because you happens to be a painter, right? I mean, I would imagine that you and I would be having the same conversation if you were in plumbing, HVAC.
Absolutely.
Doesn't matter what the trade is. It's approaching it like a business person.
This is 100% universal. And for one of my core values is constant improvement, and everything is up in the air and we have to constantly be pushing that. I grew up in a family painting business where the only time my father would change a brush or a paint is if it got discontinued, and he wasn't interested in any other thing in between. And it wasn't making his life easier. It wasn't providing happy clients, and it wasn't doing fine finishing. And it's just like, you're spending calories hurting yourself. I don't understand here,
Yeah. I kind of have the same conversation with my dad, but that's a separate thing. It's just that thing. So this decent human being, what do you call it? The decent human being theory, or?
It's the decent human being theory that we operate under. Yeah.
I had a cowboy buddy, and he used to say, if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. And that goes to culture. And quite often, I'm a business coach and I speak at conferences and trade shows and stuff, and I'll get up and talk about culture, and I see the faces in the audience. They're like, here goes this guy. There we go. Here comes the Lucky Charms talk. But let me ask you, if you removed culture from the equation, if you removed what it meant to be part of Nick Slavik painting, like what your core culture is, if you just took that out, what would your company be?
Yeah, there wouldn't be any guiding principles. Our core values, the thing I hate about a lot of this stuff is people have core values, they have their culture, they put it on a poster in their lobby, and then it doesn't equate to anything that actually goes on in the business.
Yeah.
And when I went through college, I got a business degree, and I was trained to be a mid-level manager at some Fortune 5,000 company, and is, the most blatant, Office, the TV show Office sort of middle manager thing.
Yeah.
And it was just riddled with that. And I hated all these mission statements, core values. But the problem is you need guiding principles. And I got introduced to Traction years later, and then core values became part of that. And we actually use core values to rate people 4 times a year on those core values. There's actually questions, and we have a numerical value based on that.
Yeah.
We hire people based on the core values. Like, there's a criteria. You need to meet these core values before you come in. And then we fire and promote people on them. So they have teeth. And if we didn't have those, my complete human operating system in my company would be gone.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned Traction. I'm a big fan of both Traction and Scaling Up. So Traction's written by Gino Wickman, Scaling Up by Vern Harnish. And I've been actually using the Vern Harnish system. So for those of you listening, Nick and I are currently geeking out on the systems for running a business. And for those of you who have stopped your car and are taking notes, please write these 2 books. One of them is Traction. I'm looking at it right here on my shelf. Traction.
Yeah.
Called Scaling Up. Both of those are great systems for running a business like a business. And I don't care if you're running I used to run a pool cleaning company. If you're running a pool cleaning company, if you're running a painting company, a framing company, a roofing company, a mold remediate, doesn't matter what the trade is. People don't want to hear that, Nick. They don't want to hear the truth that it does not matter what your company does. It matters about the business person you are running it.
Agreed. And it's funny that I passed the threshold, probably revenue wise, at the point that I needed books like that, I would certainly do it sooner. I would start when I had no employees, but basically a book like Traction and Scaling Up basically is like, everything's in chaos. I don't know what's going on. I have a big business. I feel like I'm doing something right. What now? And those are like guiding. They're like, they'll just give you that bump into the next step saying, we'll take all that chaos, focus it a little bit, just do this, you know? And I like that.
I think to use language that we would all understand here in the trades world, it's blueprints for business building. Just like you and I would refer to blueprints for doing an estimate or a takeoff. That's all it is.
Perfect description.
Speaking of that, you've got a 25-man crew, 25-person crew. 25-person crew. What's the support system there you have to keep the sales going? Is there a ratio you have for estimators and project managers?
Yes. So I'm, after surveying the industry, it seems like in the residential repaint industry, there are things that I term silos. And so you would have an estimator, you would have a production manager, and 10 painters. And that silo should be able to produce about $1 million worth of painting, $1 million to $1.1 million worth of painting. Project manager or production manager, or whoever you want to coin it, should be able to produce about $1 million worth of good gross profit work a year. And one estimator should be able to sell $1 million worth of paint work a year. So in my company, we basically just have 2.5 silos, give or take, and units like that.
That's great. So 10 painters, which is about the maximum that one person can manage, 1 to 10.
And that's only in a well-groomed system. Now, I did experiments because I love human experiments. I wanted to see how much humans could, withstand and withhold. I ran for one summer 22 painters by myself with no production managers. I did all the sales, all the production managing, lined up materials, site visits, and everything else. That's far beyond the extent of what you can imagine. But the simplistic standard operating procedures and the systems allowed me to function like that for a summer. But after that, I finally realized, like, oh yeah, here's the time it takes for that. That's the end. There's not an example out there of somebody running 37 painters or 37 plumbers by themselves. I mean, so now I know that. Now we can figure out what's the medium to keep everybody happy then.
Yeah. There is a magic number of how 22 is a lot, Nick.
It's a lot. Yeah.
What do you think suffered, sales or management?
Everything suffered together 40%. I mean, basically what I told everybody was like, listen, this is going to be awesome. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to take all the pain for you guys, but I have to see the limits of where this thing is. Because what if somebody could run 20 painters by themselves and still have a semblance of a family life? Yeah. Good. But I basically just told everybody, like, you're going to need to adapt on the site a little bit more. You're going to have to be a little more patient with the paint orders. Sales, what normally happens is, I do about $2 million in sales myself every year. So I was outselling my company 2 to 1 anyway. So that was the one thing where I built up a whole summer full of leads and sold jobs. And then we just went out there and produced it. So yeah, that sales, we didn't need it. I cut back my time on sales in order to produce and do all that work.
Now, some people are listening are going to ask about the top of the funnel. If you're comfortable talking about that, how do you get the business? And I mean, at the very top level, how are you generating the leads that turn into the business? Because it's not a 1-for-1. I get a phone call, I get a deal. Probably.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not that. My industry standard, an SR, a success ratio, is normally 50%. So if you do, 1,000 bids a year, you're going to get 500 jobs, give or take. I know that varies a lot with the industries, but our average job size is probably skating around seasonally. It's probably about $3,500, $3,800, give or take. Between the interior bedroom repaints and then the $40,000, $50,000 exterior restorations. So
you're interiors with the exteriors in that number, because
exactly, yeah. Oh, say that again, Dom. I was talking over you.
Sorry, it's okay. That means I overpaid for my house exterior.
So no, it's very interesting. Like, again, I'm a huge fan of experiments and holding close to the scientific process of, hypothesis, do some controlled tests, have a controlled group, gather information. And then, like we talked about before, course correcting quickly. Because if you just do a bunch of stuff and don't analyze it and make any changes, you're just doing stuff forever. So I did a whole bunch of marketing experiments over the last 4 years. And honestly, this is the most unsatisfying sort of answer I have to this. Direct mail, door-to-door flyers still gives me the best return on investment. I want Facebook to work. I want Instagram to work. I want Google AdWords to work. But I was paying upwards of $1,300 a job for a sold job for some of those avenues of marketing.
Right. For the online marketing to work.
Absolutely.
Do you use, and so I want everybody to get the takeaway message there. And again, it does not matter what trade you're in. You're saying direct mail, door hangers, door knocking, being in the neighborhood is the best lead generator.
Yes. And I should be a little more specific too. It's actually this sort of like super hands-on-y approach. There's a local company here in Minneapolis, St. Paul, where they actually take flyers, put a rubber band on the corner, and they take a human with a GoPro attached to them and go to every house and physically attach it to the doorknob so that the person who owns a house has to address this thing that was dropped at their door. They can't just, it's not in a stack of mail. It's not left on the ground. They have to physically remove it and look at it from the doorknob.
Ah, neat. And the GoPro is there to make sure quality control on their side that they've delivered.
I can watch in real time.
One of the things I talk to tradespeople about is affluent marketing. Because if you're going to paint a house, if you're going to frame a house, it doesn't matter what trade you're in. Again, you might as well go to the neighborhoods where the houses are bigger and the jobs are bigger. And as one guy joked with me, the tools don't get stolen out of my truck in nicer neighborhoods. But one of the things in affluent neighborhoods that works really well is this crazy, those chloroplast signs. They're kind of that hard plastic, double-sided.
Oh, sure.
Board that's plastic. The H-frame that it sits on. If you clip the side of that H-frame and you slide a doggy bag on there, like a roll of doggy bags, and then you say whatever you're going to say on the sign, but hey, we love you, we love this neighborhood, we love your pet, please take a bag. Well, what happens is people that are walking their dogs in that neighborhood, and of course, the richer the people, the smaller the dogs, right? As they're walking through that neighborhood, they're like, oh, isn't that nice? Oh, Nick Slavik painting. They come and they take a doggy bag or two, and they take a picture of your sign. But what happens is you start to own that neighborhood. And affluent marketing is about thinking differently and appealing to the people in that neighborhood. It's the same in any neighborhood. It's just with affluent marketing, you need that additional touch, right? Nicely done trucks. They don't have to be wrapped, but they have to be clean. The logo's got to be professional. It doesn't have to be expensive. You actually have a pretty good logo.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. What happens if you don't have a beard one day?
Yeah, so I get a lot of guff about some of that stuff. So a bunch of times a year, I have to do like OSHA compliant videos for respirators, and I get tapped to do video projects for like 3M when they do their masks. And just like the Army with the gas mask, that's why they make you shave. You got to have a clean seal. So my family and everybody else gets the bends when I shave 3 or 4 times a year. But honestly, this is like 3 weeks of growth. So I can knock one of these out in no time. So.
That's like Homer Simpson, he shaves and then right away, whoop. Yeah. Okay, so on the marketing side, you're saying that the most impactful marketing for you, and we call that the lowest acquisition cost, is doing hyper local marketing.
Very much so.
Knocking on doors and hanging things. Do you ever? I talk about something called the 5-5-10, which is when you start on a house. This is residential, of course. You start on a house. I'll do a door hanger, which is, you can get those done at Vistaprint, right? 1,000.
Yeah. Yep.
Or something. They're super cheap. 5-5-10. So 5 houses to the left, 5 to the right, and 10 across the street. And as long as you're doing that consistently, you get phone calls.
Yeah, it seems like the multiple touches and multiple interactions with people, eventually it's unsatisfying as far as marketing goes, because it's not like I saw this and I called you because I needed this. It's more of like, we saw you paint that house, we saw your truck, then we saw a sign, then we got a postcard, and 6 months later they'll call you because it's recall because you've had touches with them, and that's sort of the unsatisfying part of marketing. But honestly, that is the long play. Just seeing, even if it's a newspaper ad, something on social media, a truck in the neighborhood, and maybe a project, and maybe a recommendation on a Facebook page, all that adds up into the kind of slurry of who you're going to call,
Yeah. So if you were to start off, you're in Minneapolis, St. Paul right now. Let's say you moved to Utah as an example, and you were going to start off painting there. What would your marketing stack be right away? Get started in the business.
Yeah. So obviously you want to do, you can either get marketing with your labor or with your money. And obviously you want to go website, Facebook page, Instagram, you want to hammer it. And I would go hard. I would go 10 posts a day, pictures of stuff you've done. I mean, I would just inundate that stuff with there. I don't know that I'd necessarily boost or pay for any of that stuff. I would just start hammering. I'd be in every neighborhood group, every Salt Lake City happenings. I would join all those. I would start posting. Like, that's guerrilla kind of stuff that takes no money. If you have time, just the amount of times you can click on Facebook and Instagram, you can do that.
Yeah.
And then if I had people I could probably generate enough business to keep one painter busy or myself busy doing that. But again, if I want to replicate a 25-person crew, I would hammer direct mail right away. And again, you'd be looking for all the same things: 45 to 75-year-old, dual professional, dual income households, move up houses, professional houses over $400,000 to $500,000 a year. That's not a mystery. I mean, almost all trades market to that. You know, you just find those pockets and you go for it.
Yeah, wonderful. So hopefully people are taking notes on this. Nick, this has been fantastic. I like the points you brought up here about the decent human being theory. I suppose that has to start with you as the owner. If you're not a decent human being, Nick, you're not going to attract decent human beings.
That's right. And, you know, the one thing that I learned a lot from the Army, I learned a few things that I still do now, like standard operating procedures and things like that. But 90% of what I took from the Army is don't ever do that. Like, we are not going to be doing that here, you know? And one of them is do as I say, not as I do. My whole command structure was littered with people who were do as I say, not as I do. I can't do physically what I'm telling you to do. I'm not going to do it. And in fact, I'm going to sit in my office. My uniform doesn't look very good. I'm not upholding any of the standards of the United States, but we would like you to do that because that's the right thing to do. And it's like, oh, that's not a great way to lead. So it does. It starts with you. You have to be the shining light of all your core values. You have to be the hardest worker. You have to wake up early. You don't have to. But if you want an easy go, or at least set yourself up for a good go of leadership, that's the number one way to do it, for sure.
Yeah. There is something, and you'd recognize this. Are you familiar with you talked about traction, but do you know the scaling up? Have you ever read?
No, I don't. I'm unfamiliar.
So it's very similar to traction. I won't get into it now, but one of the things that Vern Harnish says in that book is that as goes the leader, so goes the team. But apparently there's a Turkish saying that says a fish stinks from the head down.
Both very good ways of putting it.
I like the Turkish saying,
yeah.
From the head down. And just to summarize this and put a point on it for everybody listening, I, as the leader, set the tone for the company. So Nick, I'm going to assume that the fact that you came up with decent human being as a thing for your company means that you're a good guy. You're a decent human being. It doesn't, the guy next to you who's running let's say a siding business has to be a decent human being to be successful. They just have to be themselves to be successful. But define what that is and be comfortable in that and then work within that. If you're a you-know-what, well, it's going to be a tough go. But be the kind of person that other people want to be around and be the kind of leader you are. And then just build the company around that. But just be confident in that thing. You don't have to be a decent human being like Nick is saying, but figure out who you are and just be that person consistently so the team can follow it. Because if they don't know, again, stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything. And your team needs that too. All right. This has been good, man. This has been good.
I like talking to you, Dom. This is fun.
Yeah, this is a good interview. Listen, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, if they want to find out more or watch your videos, where do we find you on the World Wide Web?
Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, just search for Nick Slavik. It's all on there.
Slavik, S-L-A-V-I-K.
That's right.
Watching this on YouTube, some are listening, while they're driving their car. And then you host Ask a Painter Live. What's that?
Correct. So it's a show I started 4 years ago. It's a weekly show on Friday. I have never missed a week in 4 years. We've done it from frozen lakes. I've done it from the wilderness, from a fly-in plane in Canada, islands in the Gulf of Mexico, California, all over the place. But basically, it started off as just answering primer questions. What primer do I use for this? And it evolved as I evolved. I started Ask a Painter when I was one person. I now have 25. You can watch the evolution of somebody who knows how to paint, but it doesn't know how to run a business, learn how to run a business. So now I mix in coating science, techniques, sprayers, things like that. But I also go the highest level traction / scaling up / basic business systems and processes too. So
wonderful. Well, that sounds like that's high value entertainment.
Well, it's free, Dom, so you can't complain about that, right?
Very few comments about the subscription fee for a free podcast.
That's right.
All right, Nick, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. Lots of takeaways here. Again, for any trade, you're doing a lot of things right, and it sounds like you're never resting on your laurels either. You're still looking for ways to do things better all the time.
That's right. My third core value is constant improvement. You got to live it, right?
Well, maybe we'll have you back in a couple of years, months. What do you need, years or months to turn a cycle? And we'll see what.
Well, listen, I would do this in another week with you. This is awesome.
You need time to evolve so that we see what the changes. All right, Nick. Thank you so much. You have a great day. I appreciate your time.
Likewise, Dom. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.